Welcome back to another episode of The Rest is Cut. In this episode, me and my girlfriend Taylor are going to build a chicken coop. Here you see me leaving Cooksburg Lumber in upstate New York, and I'm driving about 10 miles back to my house. You see me using my ice pick right there to keep my bandana there as a flag. I do that from time to time. This is 8 and 10 foot lengths of hemlock fresh cut lumber. I'm getting right into the design. The design was basically a square house with a square cage in front of it. And we bought chickens in April, and they are growing very fast. And we need to keep them outside the house because we rent the house. So from time to time, we need to have people that we don't know in the house, and we can't have them in the house with chickens, so they have to be outside. And here I'm drilling holes for my large nails that I'm going to hammer in place to keep the frames together. So I'm building an 8 by 8 foot box, basically 6 feet high, and I'm going to have 3 identical size walls, and then I'm going to put a slanted roof on top of it. So I'm using these framing nails just on the outside, these long nails, and I'm just using a framing hammer to nail this together. But I'm going to use my Pazlo nail gun to keep most of it together. I check in the diagonal just to make sure it's square, and once I know that that bottom wall is square, I use it as a reference for the next 2 walls right on top of it. And because each one of the 3 walls is the same size, it makes it a little bit easier to build them all at the same time. This is cross bracing, and this is what keeps these type of walls from racking or becoming out of square. Once I know I'm in square, I put these corner braces in. And I'm using a Pazlo nail gun there. I use it for quite a bit of the build. It is a power nailer, works on propane. They're very tricky. They don't always work very well, and that one I've owned for about 10 years. And one thing I've learned is that if it's not working well, it's really important to make sure that your gas is fresh. Even though it might be a brand new can of gas out of an old package, if it's not fresh or the expiration date on it, like fruit, it will be bad. I found that out the hard way on a job. So that's going to be the doorway. There's Taylor helping me out there. And this is basically Taylor's design. She's in charge of the chickens. And so now that is the bottom of the doorway. And you can see there's no leaves on the trees. This is in early May. So now this is the 3rd wall. This wall will have a window in it. It's really just to let light in. And of course to let some cross ventilation in. So I'm doing a build style which is board and batten. I'm going to have vertical boards directly on those frames. I should have a cross brace in there, but I was kind of rushing the framing. I just wanted to get the walls up. I add them in later. So there we're putting our walls in place. Taylor dug that trench that's all the way around the whole house, and that is to keep the chicken wire that we use, which is called hardware cloth, which is kind of an interesting name. I just learned it while we were working on this. We bury the chicken wire or the hardware cloth below grade so that in case any animals or predators want to dig in, they're going to have to encounter the hardware cloth underneath. So here I'm just putting the framing up, and you notice I'm putting it on top of cinder blocks there that are just going to keep it level. And I'm screwing it directly to the side of my existing garage. That's just to make it quick and easy. And then also that space used to be a garden, which we don't use anymore, and so now it's going to be the chicken coop. And here I am putting the slanted roof on. So once I build my box, I then put the slanted roof onto it. And I like to leave things long and then cut them in place wherever possible. Not always, but sometimes I do that. It's just sort of a matter of convenience. And that nailer comes in extremely handy. This is the other side. There's Taylor. She's sort of the job supervisor. She was my client in this case. And these are the rafters. I use 2x4s because I just wanted to keep it light and simple. My only concern is the snow load, but I think I'll be safe. And if I see that roof starting to droop, I'll put another cross member inside if I see it droop with snow on it. But I think I'll be safe. There, there you see me toenailing the roof joists in place. And now I'm starting to do the siding. I use 1x10s and 1x12 fresh cut hemlock planks. There's going to be a cutout for the doorway there. I use the circular saw for what I can, and then I just finish the cut with the handsaw. And it moved pretty quickly on the first couple days. I spent about maybe $1,200 on materials on this. It's a little pricey, but it adds up quick. Even this small little house adds up. The amount of material, you think that you've had enough material, then you have to go back and buy more. And then the hardware cloth, or the also known as chicken wire, was very expensive because it's the industrial stuff. You see it there in the ground there. We buried it halfway. So the ground up there is very rocky. You can see all the rocks. So once we dug up the trenches, we threw all the rocks back in on either side of the wire. So it's going to be even harder for any predators to dig under there. And this Taylor's swinging the nail gun. She's a fast learner. And there we go, just surveying the job completed till there. And Taylor's just cutting some of the planks for the back wall. I left her alone. She did a lot of it herself. This was a good project for us to do together because there's some simple framing techniques that Taylor could learn. And she got to use that nail gun quite a bit. And the circular saw for the first time. And there I just left the wood long and I'm cutting it to fit in place. And now these are the same shape as the rafters. They're going to basically be caps on either side of the house, just to give a finished look at the top of the walls, and it's basically the end of the roof. And a couple weeks went by until I was able to get back to the build, so from this point on you'll see there's a lot more leaves on the trees. This is just a couple days ago, toward the end of May. The video started at the beginning of May. So I bury that pole, get that squared up. That's going to be the corner of our cage. And now I'm just using some of these clips and stuff to keep that level while I'm working alone. Willie showed up to help me. And here I'm just building the perimeter of all the different parts of the cage. And it's not going to be too heavy with framing, so I wanted to use just thick boards on the outside edge. So that's why I'm using 4x4s. And then the 2x4s against the house basically becomes a nailer for the chicken wire. That's timber locks I'm using right there. Those are like 8-inch screws, creating the archway or the opening for the door. And you can see how we're burying the hardware cloth under every one of the walls. This is our doorway. I nail it all together with the Pazzo nailer, but then I follow up and screw it all together as well. So the nailer keeps me moving along quickly, and then I follow up with screws. So before I put it in place, I screwed it quite a bit. Now I'm hinging it into place, and this is going to be our door latch. I started running out of wood, and to avoid making another lumber run, I started splicing pieces together. This is the end of our soffit, maybe you might say, or our the end of the roof there. Took 3 sheets of plywood to cover the roof totally. And then from the beehive house, we used this same corrugated metal roofing that I'm about to put on there. And these were the cutoffs from the beehive house. So I was able to utilize the leftovers, which was my last build on this channel. Now, one of the hottest days so far this year, here I am on the roof, screwing, being very exhausted and nervous that I might slide off of that metal. Even though the roof wasn't pitched quite severely, that metal was extremely slippery because it was covered with oil. Saying goodbye to some friends. And now that's the main cross member. That's going to be the top of the cage. I'm using 4-foot wide chicken wire, at least on the ceiling of the cage, and so half of it's going to go over one of those spans and the other half will be over the other span. And now you see the roll of hardware cloth there in the background. It's 24 inches. So each one of these 2x4s is at 24 inches so that I could split the difference on the center of each 2x4. There's my buddy Ryan. We're putting 1 1/4 inch crown staples in. I know there's a lot of predators that want to dig into this thing, so hopefully this will be at least strong enough. There's plenty of 1 1/4 inch galvanized 1/4 inch crown staples on all of the pieces of wire mesh. And I worked my way up from the bottom, and then I ended up with that little piece at the top. It's just kind of bad planning, but it worked out okay. That wire is very difficult to manipulate. We had a hard time keeping it flat. And of course, whenever you do anything repetitive, by the time you do the very last one, you know exactly what you should have done from the beginning. And my camera kept shutting off, so I only have bits and pieces of this part of the build where I'm stretching the wire tightly at the top. So that's why I slowed them down, because I only have these few pieces. And there's the chickens. The chickens are great. They stay right where we put them. So if we put them right there for the day, they'll stay there for 8 hours. But now they're going to stay in their house. There's the window. Once the winter sets in, we'll figure out what to do. But for now, while it's warm out, it's just going to be a mesh window. Framing the door, putting the battens over those cracks there, using my 16 gauge Paso nailer for the fine details. And screwing a threshold in there. We haven't put a door in yet, but we will. And I made these perches out of just some of the leftover wood. The birds like to perch. In time, I will make the nesting boxes. And here we are. There's Lucky hanging out, waiting for the chickens. And there's the door. And everything is done. And we put the chickens in there. They're getting used to their new home, running around. And Taylor's feeding them some live grass. In time, these chickens are going to be jumping through hoops for her because she's an incredible animal trainer. And there it is, the back, and then the front. I left the corner post long. I might use it as a sign stand somehow. Thank you for watching.